What's up, fellow internet denizens? Let's do what everyone says not to do and judge some books by their covers. Book covers are the first thing you see when you go into a store or look up a friend's recommendations, meaning that these authors need to pick the right ones in order to attract the right audiences. Sometimes they nail it on the head, while other times they create actual monstrosities. We're not just talking about bad book covers here because that's negative and probably overdone at this point. I want people to discuss what makes a good cover, what draws people in, and what is unappealing. Side note, I do not mean to shame any of the artists here unless they've done something egregious, so please don't go after anyone. Let's dive in, shall we? Okay, this was actually prominent for a while in the fantasy genre, but I have chosen to include a couple of other genres to display it because it started to reach containment, actually. I like these because they get their message across. With The Year of Living Biblically, you have a guy dressed as Moses holding the tablets and posing comically, and you know, it's a comedic take on Mosaic law. With the Night Angel books, it's a guy in a cloak holding a knife and lunging, so you can guess it's probably about an assassin. With Mexican Gothic, you have a woman in a vintage dress holding a yellow bouquet, sitting somewhat anxiously, and you know this takes place sometime in the 50s, and the woman is scared of something. With All the Rain Promises and more, you'll probably learn either about mushrooms or the trombone, I think. I love the man's attitude here, though. Dude's having a blast. Anyway, these covers tell you what to expect in a book, and I like that. If I find a cover like this, I will most likely pick it up and read its contents.
How it feels to chew 5 gum.
For those who don't know, Dark Frutiger Arrow is the name of the glossy, hyper-detailed art style used in the late 2000s through the early 2010s, mostly in 5-gum commercials, dubstep logos, and some computer applications before corporate minimalism took over. Now, a lot of Book Talk famous books use something like this style, with an added bonus of clustering random things together, with maybe plants or lightning in the background. Are any of these things related to the story in any way, shape, or form? Probably tangentially if you squint. While I am a fan of Dark Frutiger Arrow, I am not a fan of this style of book cover. I want to be enticed, not handed a pile of shiny arrows, hearts, and ribbons and told to just hold on to it for a while. These are almost invariably romantic-y too, and I am really not into that. Speaking of romance, I think I hear something. Hang on. Sometimes the artist wants you to focus on something in particular. In fact, they're down bad about it. Sometimes the assets presented have little to nothing to do with the plot at hand. Sometimes they have everything to do with it. There is no way of knowing here. If I'm into it, I'll pick it up. Witchstorm was actually really good, as was the Dune series, except the last two. Also, the Danish Dune cover isn't that egregious. I just included it here because their word for Dune is hilarious.
Space.
I love space because I am an alien. I especially love book covers that look like they could be Muse or Cell Dweller album covers. Actually, now that I think of it, let's play a game. I hid an album cover in here somewhere. Pause and try to guess which one it is. I'll give you a cookie if you win. So, when I call this category space, I mean anything that looks futuristic and awesome, like robots or a woman on the moon, that sort of thing. I especially like the campy ones with absolutely random stuff on it. Those are cool. The contents often vary in quality because, while there are so many good space books, there's infinitely more schlock because 20th century sci-fi is an interesting minefield. Be warned, some books here might have some dated ideologies, racism, or just weird stuff involving genitalia. Anyway, these book covers have been around since pulp sci-fi magazines became popular, and while they've had their ups and downs, they've been a literary mainstay. Let's keep it that way. I love them.
369, damn, you're fine.
All of these covers have a face staring into the distance. Some of these covers stare into your soul, while others stare off into the side. I don't like the former because eye contact makes me feel weird and gross. In my experience, this type of cover tells me that this is going to be either a biography, a dystopia, or a character study. I haven't really read many of these face books yet, but I am open to reading more of them, as long as they're not staring into my soul or about some weird political tirade.
I am Oz.
are great and powerful.
This is a subset of the face category that died in the early 2000s as far as I'm aware. Here, we have a disembodied head, usually in space or floating over a scene in space. These seem to either be absolutely gut-wrenching sci-fi or some dude's crackpot idea. Usually, if the author's name first shows up on a site other than LinkedIn or some kind of watch list when you look it up, it's safe to say that your floating head book will probably be pretty alright.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky!
Have you ever had to complete an online module for work or school? This is the art style they use for it. It's not bad, but it's a little too saccharine for me. Let's call it Yossified Memphis Corporate, because that is the only way I can fully describe it. Some of these are more egregious than others. Oftentimes, the covers here directly reflect the warm, fuzzy, wuzzy feeling within the books themselves. To people like me, this is like a monarch butterfly being red and therefore signifying that it is poisonous. However, I do not fault the artists here. Clearly, they at least tried. Furthermore, there are a surprising amount of these that are actually published Raylo. Why? Anyway, a lot of these books are very popular, and if you're into reading mushy love stories and are into this aesthetic, you'll probably enjoy these.
Look at this graph.
You know how there's always that one kid in high school who just took up photography and is obsessed with angles and dynamics and all that? Well, that is what these covers feel like. I love Ruth Ware, The Scent Keeper was awesome, and I have enjoyed what I've read from John Grisham. Some others of these I will never read due to personal triggers or several other reasons combined. Overall, a mixed bag, but some interesting photography choices. All of these covers feel like they were made by a kid in skinny jeans squatting and yelling at a pigeon to get out of their shot, only to then call the photograph Western Symphony 52, when really it's just a picture of their gymnasium but upside down. Most of the time, I only select these books if I know I like the author or I've heard some actually good things about the book. Maybe I just don't get photography. By the way, I included a little life here and not in Facebook because it just gives sophomore photography project by someone who just found out about Migrant Mother.
Coming soon to theaters.
My opinions on this type of cover are near universal. Nobody asked for it, and yet they stopped printing the cool original covers because fuck you, we want you to pay attention to this movie or show we made. If my books ever make it so far as Hollywood, I will not do this if I have a choice. A lot of times, the adaptations suck anyway, so you just have this monument of suck on your shelf now. I used to have the entire Percy Jackson series on my shelf back when I was in middle school, but the first one was the movie cover, and every time I picked it up for a reread, I would have to stare at Logan Lerman doing something that Percy would never do, and that pissed me off. In the late 90s and early 2000s, computer animation was booming. It feels like during this period of time, televised media was trying to push CGI on us before the technology was really refined, like Jimmy Neutron and Butt Ugly Martians and so on. There are actually a ton of books that I remember from this time that did that sort of aesthetic on the cover. I did enjoy a lot of them, especially Animorphs and this one Star Wars one with a girl wielding a light whip. Light whips are my favorite sci-fi weapon, by the way. Don't at me. Anyway, the quality of animation on the cover varies. I think the only ones that could fully pull this off were Animorphs, but only because the transformation sequences were supposed to be nauseating and grotesque. You know how I said I'm not meaning to shame anyone here? Well, I'm shaming the fuck out of these thieves. Do not buy these. If the author didn't try at all with the cover, then they probably didn't try hard with the book and therefore do not deserve your money. If it's the publisher that did this, they didn't have the wherewithal to read this book in the first place and just shout it out for quick cash because the author's name has clout. If either party would rather rob artists than commission something, then they're probably out to rob you too. I can only hope this dies like the CGI cover art trend of the late 90s. Additionally, a couple really cool people made video essays on some of these, so if you want to hear what one of these books actually sounds like without having to pay an art thief, check those out. These videos are rides.
Disappointed!
Sometimes you get something so simple that the designers probably didn't even try. It's just text over a logo. It doesn't entice me. The books I've read with this problem already had hype around them, so I didn't choose them based on the cover. Seriously, when I first shopped for Wheel of Time, the only reasonably priced copies were the 2020 editions, where it's just a snake and the wheel in random places on the cover, cropped weirdly, in the most boring beige colors I have ever seen. Had this series not been recommended to me, I would just pass it on a shelf and think nothing of it. The only reason I got through Wheel of Time was because I actually enjoyed the prose. Do better, Tor!
Adventure time! Come on, grab your friends. We'll go to very distant land.
This is my favorite type of book cover. These are more than just man-carrying thing. These show action. Here, you have our heroes in the middle of a battle or running from enemies or climbing mountains. I love this because you know what you're getting into and you're intrigued. For example, look at Homeland by R.A. Salvatore. Here, you have an elf with a black panther in what looks to be a cave with a city in the background. You ask yourself how he got here, why there is a city in a cave, and how he befriended this panther. All of these are answered in the book.
Disgusting!
Just like my life's trajectory this far, let's end on a dumpster fire. Every so often, you see a cover that is so bad, you have to wonder what was going through the artist's head. Maybe it just looked better in the Word document where they edited it together. Sometimes you know exactly what was going through their head, and you can't unknow, like with Empress Teresa and Chris Chan. Other times, as with Sheba Blake and this god-awful cover of All Quiet on the Western Front, you have no idea what was going through their head. Whatever the case though, congratulations. You have a truly unique book cover. Book covers come in all sorts of trends and are arguably one of the most important ways to draw in your readers. I, for one, have a tendency to pick up books at thrift stores and libraries based on their covers, and then purchase or check them out based on whether the blurb correlates with the cover. Around a quarter of the books we have were ones I picked up because the cover was my kind of weird. I know what kind of books I like, and I know what covers turn me off of a book. Many of you guys, whether consciously or unconsciously, probably do the same to some degree. Furthermore, in a world of corporations becoming increasingly low effort in their output, we need to appreciate the good art there is before publishers decide to replace genuinely passionate people with machines. Sorry to get all doom and gloom there, I'm just sick and tired of AI slop. Anyway, there are so many book covers out there, and I probably forgot to mention a few types. Are there any patterns or trends that you guys noticed that I forgot to mention? What types of covers do you guys generally pick up? This is one of my favorite topics currently, and I would love to see what you guys are into, and maybe judge you for it. Just kidding, of course. Anyway, I've been Alien Daydreamer, and I am out. Bye!